There's something profoundly symbolic about the way rosemary has been associated with memory for centuries. Long before modern science began dissecting molecules and measuring neural activity, people intuitively understood that this plant carried a relationship with the mind. And when you look closer, that intuition begins to make sense. Rosemary tea contains powerful antioxidants and bioactive compounds that help protect the brain from oxidative stress, a process that gradually erodes cognitive function over time. But the significance of that goes beyond biology. It touches something deeper about how we sustain clarity in a world that constantly pulls us toward distraction. Think about what it means to have a clear mind. It's not merely about remembering facts or processing information faster. It's about the ability to orient yourself in reality, to perceive what matters, to distinguish what is essential from what is trivial. In that sense, supporting the brain is not just a health decision, it's a philosophical one. When you nourish your mind, you are, in a very real way, choosing to confront life with greater awareness rather than drifting through it unconsciously. Research suggests that compounds in rosemary may enhance concentration, support memory formation, and even influence mood by interacting with neurotransmitter systems in the brain. But what's remarkable is how such a small habit, a cup of tea, can become a deliberate act of self-respect. It becomes a reminder that your mind is not a disposable tool but a sacred instrument that shapes your perceptions, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. In a culture obsessed with instant stimulation, cultivating mental clarity is an act of quiet rebellion. It requires discipline, intentionality, and the courage to slow down. Rosemary tea, in this sense, becomes more than a beverage, it becomes a ritual. A moment where you pause, reflect, and reinforce the idea that your cognitive health is worth protecting. Because when you strengthen your mind, you strengthen your capacity to live meaningfully, and the quality of your thoughts will determine the quality of your life. When you examine the human body carefully, you begin to realize that health is not merely the absence of illness, it is the presence of order. Inflammation, at its core, is a sign that something in that order has been disrupted. Sometimes it's necessary, even life-saving, but when it becomes chronic, it quietly erodes the structure that keeps the body functioning optimally. Rosemary tea enters this picture not as a miracle cure, but as a subtle yet meaningful ally in restoring balance. The compounds found in rosemary, particularly its anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, work in ways that modern science is only beginning to fully appreciate. They help the body regulate immune responses, reduce unnecessary inflammation, and defend against harmful pathogens. But what's fascinating is how this biological process mirrors a psychological one. Just as chronic inflammation reflects a body under constant strain, chronic stress reflects a mind that has lost its equilibrium. Consider how often we live in a state of perpetual tension, reacting to every demand, every distraction, every perceived threat. Over time, that state becomes normalized, even though it slowly weakens us. Supporting the immune system, then, becomes more than a physical act, it becomes a statement of intent. It says, I refuse to live in permanent disorder. Drinking rosemary tea, in that sense, becomes a small but deliberate gesture toward stability and resilience. There is also something deeply empowering about recognizing that health is built through consistent, modest choices rather than dramatic interventions. A cup of rosemary tea will not transform your life overnight, but it can become part of a framework of habits that gradually strengthen your body's defenses and your sense of agency. It reminds you that you are not entirely at the mercy of chaos, you have the capacity to influence the trajectory of your own well-being. And perhaps that is the most profound lesson here. When you reduce unnecessary inflammation, both in your body and in your life, you create the conditions for clarity, strength, and purpose to emerge. Because order, once restored, does not merely preserve life, it elevates it. If you follow the logic of the body closely enough, you begin to see that digestion is not just a mechanical process. It is a conversation between what you consume and who you become. Every choice you make about what enters your system shapes the energy you have, the clarity you experience, and the discipline you cultivate. Rosemary tea fits into this dialogue in a surprisingly profound way, because it supports digestion, metabolism, and internal balance in a manner that is both subtle and enduring. From a physiological perspective, rosemary has long been associated with improved digestive function. It can help stimulate bile production, ease bloating, and support the liver's natural detoxification processes. These are not trivial details. The liver and digestive system are central to how efficiently the body converts nourishment into usable energy. When these systems function well, you feel lighter, more focused, and more capable of sustained effort. When they don't, fatigue, discomfort, and mental fog often follow. In that sense, digestion is not merely about food. It's about the foundation of vitality. But there is a deeper layer to this. Metabolism reflects how effectively you transform potential into reality. Food is potential energy, the body's task is to convert that potential into action. When that process is efficient, life feels more manageable. When it's impaired, everything feels heavier than it should. Supporting metabolism, therefore, becomes a metaphor for a broader principle. The ability to transform resources into meaning, effort into progress, and intention into action. Drinking rosemary tea can become a symbolic act within this framework. It is a reminder that sustainable change rarely comes from extreme measures but from consistent, intelligent habits. You are not merely soothing your stomach or supporting your liver, you are reinforcing the idea that small, disciplined choices accumulate into powerful transformations over time. And perhaps that is the most important insight of all. When you take responsibility for how you nourish your body, you begin to take responsibility for how you shape your life. Because the way you metabolize what you consume physically and psychologically will ultimately determine how far you can go.